I imported a transmission from overseas to make this diesel BMW a drift car. So today on the diesel drift build, we're going to be talking about the transmission. Not a lot of 335Ds have been manual swapped, at least in the States. So this is kind of an area there's not a whole lot of information for. The reason I went with the 6-speed swap is I don't want to drift in auto. Some people like them, I don't. I didn't want to do an 8 HP swap, which is pretty common on these cars. I wanted a 6-speed where I could grab the gears and choose what gear I want to be in. I did a lot of research on this swap to try and get as much information as possible before I ended up doing this. So I knew which transmission I needed, which clutch, flywheel, what shifter I needed, and the other manual swap parts and wiring that I needed to make this all happen. All right, so this is the transmission that we're using. This is a GS653DZ. D is in diesel. This is from a E90, E91 from overseas that we imported. It has the bell housing specific to the aluminum block M57. And then we're not running the stock clutch because it can't handle the torque that we're putting down. So we have an aftermarket clutch solution and a single mass flywheel conversion for this. For the flywheel, which is one of the big things with this, we needed a flywheel that fit the US spec M57. I also wanted a single mass. I did not want a dual mass. A single mass can handle the abuse of drifting and clutch kicks a little bit better than a dual mass can. So I wanted to go with a single mass, and that's not easy to find or easy to get over here. So we ended up going with this custom made single mass flywheel from overseas over in the UK and had that sent over to us. It uses the factory flex plate behind it so that you still have the starter ring for the starter, and then a cast iron heavyweight flywheel for that's going to adapt it to an OE style clutch. And for that clutch, we're using a uniclutch. This is Uniclutch's track clutch. This is a dual disc clutch. And the cool thing with uniclutch is it doesn't actually use the flywheel friction surface. It's all a self-contained clutch. So all we have to worry about is spacing it to where the finger height, where the release bearing touches, is close to where it would be factory. So then you don't have to be shimming your release bearing. You don't have to have a longer pivot point or anything like that. You can use all factory parts for that and have the factory height fingers for the clutch. So Uniclutch sends you a fitment kit, and that's going to give you the correct spacers as well as the adapter ring for the clutch to your specific flywheel. And so they require an OE style flywheel so that they know where the bolt holes are and where the dowels are to give you the proper fitment kit. I'm sure there's thousands of these fitment kits, and we were sent this one, and unfortunately it did not have the correct input shafts adapter for the clutch pack itself. It had the correct flywheel and we could get the correct spacing, but we didn't have the large 36 tooth input shaft adapter that snap rings into the middle of this clutch that makes it able to adapt to many different transmissions. So we had to order that. We reached out to Uniclutch and it was just a little mix up with the kits. They sent that out to us, but they're in Australia. So we had a long time waiting for that to get sent over to us. But once we did, it was simple to snap ring that into the engine, get the clutch installed on the engine, and then we could put that new adapter in there and finally get the transmission all mated up to the engine. Okay, so we waited for this part so that they could send it to us. Wasn't in our original fitment kit because we needed the more splines, larger style. So finally got this and fits. So this is our adapter for the uniclutch. Fits onto the transmission nicely, slides on there. We have our new release bearing, new fork. So we're gonna get this fitted up and I'll show you on the clutch where this part goes. Okay, so we have the uniclutch on our flywheel. We have it adapted, torque to spec, and then their correct spacing so that the finger height here is close to stock, so you don't have to shim your release bearing or anything like that. So that is the beauty of this clutch. Okay, so we're going to put it in with this collar facing forward, and it just slides in there, sits in that groove, and then we have a snap ring. Just want to make sure that's fully seated. So then that's how we adapt this universal clutch to our BMW transmission input shaft, and then adapts it to the flywheel. And then this spacing allows it to have this pack in and out. So makes it pretty easy for this swap. So now we're going to get the whole transmission and mate it up to this engine and get it back in the car. All right, that is a GS6 mounted to a M57, and I just used all of the automatic transmission bolts in the holes that they came out of, and none of them bottomed out. I don't know why BMW would, make the belt housing a different thickness, which they didn't. So all the OEM automatic bolts work. I'm going to torque those to spec, and then we got to do a little bit of wiring because we got to chop up the automatic harness, and then I want reverse lights to work, so I'm going to run the manual harness and kind of integrate them. So we're going to work on that next. So the next main point with this is the wiring. So I want my reverse lights to work amongst other things. So we need the connector for the reverse light switch, and we're going to be running that up and using that. You could just zip tie up the automatic wiring if you want to, but I chose to strip the harness of what I didn't need. So I ended up pulling all of the wires that would go down to the transmission, the automatic. I ended up cutting those out of the entire harness, depinning the connectors and pulling those wires completely out. The only wires I left in are the CAN bus signal wires, which are twisted wires that are the communication system for the entire car, and those need to be looped. Otherwise, you stop that communication and you're going to have a lot of different issues. So on this car, we trim those back to where we can solder those together, crimp them together, and complete that connection later on in the build. But for now, we can just strip the harness, get those reverse wires ran up there, and put that all on top of the engine for when we go to install it back into the car. So trans is now made it to the engine. The engine goes back on the subframe, and in our subframe video, we have that going back up into the car as one whole unit and package. The other aspect of this is the shifter. Now, I tried getting an OE setup from BMW with the parts car that I got for my manual swap. I made the mistake of buying an all-wheel drive car, an X-Drive car, and the shifters are different for those transmissions than for the rear-wheel drive setup. So with that, instead of sourcing the specific rear-wheel drive setup that I needed for about the same price, I could get this aftermarket Garagistic chassis-mounted shifter, and this gives me the adjustability for different knobs, different heights, and it's a really nice piece. The big question is the selector rod that goes from your shifter in the car down to the transmission. I was told that the diesel transmissions are specific to them. I believe it's either with the engine tilt or the length. So with that, and not getting that selector rod with the transmission when I imported it, I chose to go with a custom length DSSR, the selector rod, dual shear selector rod, and that allows me to get the length exactly how I need it. And so we're going to end up welding that together to the exact length so that we can reach all the gears and we can fine tune the shifter location in the car as well. I will touch on the transmission mount. So these manual transmissions are about 3/4 of an inch or 19 millimeters shorter than the automatic. So your mount into the car, you need a rear wheel drive transmission mount. I did make my original trans mount work by just simply adding new holes to the chassis with some rib nuts. Now, it can be used from a gas car, but you need that mount unless you want to drill holes like I did and just move those up 3/4 of an inch and put rib nuts in those and use those. So I know a few people have done this swap before. There is some information out there. There's a lot of guys that have done different setups, 8HP guys, different manual swap, some T56 stuff. If you've done it, I want to know how you did it and your opinion towards it. If you would have done anything differently than me, I want to know that as well. If you think I missed something because I haven't driven the car yet, I'd like to know that too. So all of the pedal info for the manual swap will be in the interior video, and then we have some finalization still to do with this setup. We have the final wires to run, things to run into the actual computer itself so that it can see the signal from the clutch pedal, and some tuning as well, and we have all that to finalize later on. But this is the main chunk of the manual swap. I think it's going to be great. You guys let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the rest of the videos on this car. We're doing different videos for the larger aspects of it, so check those out, and we'll catch you on the next one.